Stop assuming your inferiority. The philosophy of Niccolo Machiavelli. In the annals of philosophical thought, few names evoke as much controversy and misunderstanding as Niccolo Machiavelli. Often vilified, frequently misinterpreted, Machiavelli's ideas have been both a source of fascination and revulsion for centuries. But what if I told you that beneath the surface of his seemingly cynical observations lies a profound wisdom that could revolutionize how you view yourself and your place in the world? Today we embark on a journey to unravel the complexities of Machiavellian thought, not as a manual for tyranny, but as a mirror to our own assumptions of inferiority. For in the depths of the Prince and Machiavelli's other works, we find not just political strategy, but a philosophy of life that challenges us to confront our own limitations and rise above them. Let us begin by dispelling a common misconception. Machiavelli was not advocating for cruelty or deceit as virtues in themselves. Rather, he was holding up a mirror to the reality of human nature and the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. In doing so, he invites us to question our own assumptions about power, morality, and our place in the grand tapestry of existence. Consider for a moment, how often do we assume our own inferiority in the face of challenges? How frequently do we shrink from opportunity, convinced that we are not worthy, not capable, not destined for greatness? Machiavelli would argue that such assumptions are not just self-defeating, but fundamentally misguided. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great." This simple statement encapsulates a profound truth, that our perception of our own capabilities often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we assume our inferiority, we create the very conditions that confirm our fears. But when we approach life with the conviction of our own potential, we open doors that we previously believed to be locked. But Machiavelli's wisdom goes beyond mere positive thinking. He understood that the world is not always a fair or just place, that fortune, or fortuna as he called it, plays a significant role in our lives. Yet, rather than using this as an excuse for passivity or defeatism, Machiavelli saw it as a call to action. He famously stated, "I believe that it is possible for one never to be unfortunate if one has that versatility of nature which enables him to adapt himself to the diverse circumstances in which he may be placed." This adaptability, this refusal to be defined or limited by circumstances, is at the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy. So I ask you, dear listener, how might your life change if you approached each challenge not as a victim of circumstance, but as a versatile actor capable of adapting to any situation? What fears might dissolve? What possibilities might emerge if you refuse to assume your own inferiority? Machiavelli's insights extend beyond the individual to our understanding of society and human nature. He observed that people are generally self-interested, fickle, and prone to deception. While this may seem cynical at first glance, it offers a liberating perspective. By understanding the reality of human nature, we free ourselves from naive expectations and arm ourselves with the knowledge to navigate the world as it is. This realism, however, does not equate to moral relativism or a justification for unethical behavior. Rather, it's a call to clear-sighted action. Machiavelli argued that true virtue lies not in adhering to abstract moral principles regardless of consequences, but in taking actions that produce good results for the greatest number of people. In this light, assuming our own inferiority becomes not just a personal failing, but a dereliction of our duty to contribute positively to the world. If we shrink from challenges, if we refuse to seize opportunities for fear of our own inadequacy, we deny the world the unique contributions only we can make. So, as we delve deeper into Machiavelli's philosophy, I challenge you to examine your own assumptions. Where in your life have you been assuming your inferiority? In what areas have you been shrinking from your potential, convinced that you are not capable or worthy? For in truth, the greatest barrier to our success and fulfillment is often not external circumstances, but our own self-imposed limitations. Machiavelli's wisdom invites us to cast these aside, to approach life with clear eyes and unwavering resolve. It challenges us to see ourselves not as pawns of fate, but as architects of our own destiny. In the words of Machiavelli himself, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. As we continue our exploration, let us commit to experiencing ourselves as we truly are, beings of immense potential, capable of adapting to any circumstance, ready to shape our world rather than be shaped by it. For in embracing this perspective, we do more than improve our own lives. We contribute to the betterment of society as a whole, bringing our unique gifts and perspectives to bear on the challenges that face us all. This perhaps is the ultimate legacy of Machiavelli's thought, not a guide to tyranny, but an invitation to fully realize our human potential. Virtue Unleashed, harnessing Machiavellian wisdom to conquer self-doubt. As we delve deeper into Machiavelli's philosophy, we encounter a concept that lies at the heart of his worldview: virtue. Often mistranslated as simply virtue. Virtue in Machiavelli's writing encompasses a far more complex and nuanced idea. It is not merely moral goodness, but a combination of courage, adaptability, foresight, and decisive action. In essence, virtue is the antithesis of assumed inferiority. It is the quality that allows an individual to shape their own destiny and impact the world around them. But how do we cultivate this virtue in our own lives? How do we move from a place of self-doubt and assumed inadequacy to one of confident action and self-determination? Machiavelli offers us several key insights that can guide us on this journey. First, we must recognize that virtue is not an innate quality, but a skill that can be developed and honed over time. Machiavelli writes, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme." This is not a call to blind imitation, but rather an invitation to learn from those who have demonstrated virtue in their own lives. Who are the individuals you admire for their courage, their adaptability, their ability to shape circumstances to their will? Study them, understand their methods, and adapt their strategies to your own unique situation. But Machiavelli also warns us against complacency. He famously stated, "Men are so simple and yield so readily to the desires of the moment that he who will trick will always find another who will suffer to be tricked." In the context of our discussion, this serves as a stark reminder that if we do not actively cultivate our virtue, we leave ourselves vulnerable to those who would take advantage of our assumed inferiority. So I ask you, dear listener, in what areas of your life have you been suffering to be tricked by your own self-doubt? Where have you yielded to the desires of the moment rather than pursuing the long-term cultivation of your virtue? Machiavelli's philosophy challenges us to take a hard look at our own behavior and motivations. He argues that we must be willing to act decisively even in the face of uncertainty. "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally," he writes. This is not a call to recklessness, but rather an invitation to trust in our own judgment and abilities. Consider for a moment how often have you hesitated to take action paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake? How many opportunities have slipped through your fingers because you assumed you weren't ready, weren't good enough, weren't deserving? Machiavelli would argue that such hesitation is far more damaging than any potential misstep. But cultivating virtue is not just about individual action, it's also about understanding and navigating the complex web of human relationships and societal structures. Machiavelli was keenly aware that no person exists in isolation, and that our success or failure is intimately tied to our ability to work with, and sometimes against, others. He famously wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved." If you cannot be both, while this statement is often taken out of context to paint Machiavelli as an advocate for tyranny, its true meaning is far more nuanced. It's a recognition that in a world where not everyone will have your best interests at heart, it's crucial to cultivate a certain strength of character, a willingness to stand firm in your convictions and not be swayed by the desire for approval or affection. This doesn't mean we should abandon kindness or compassion. Rather, it's an invitation to balance these qualities with a clear-eyed understanding of human nature and the realities of power dynamics. It's about recognizing that assuming your own inferiority, constantly seeking approval and validation from others, can leave you vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation. So how do we strike this balance? How do we cultivate the strength to stand in our own power while still maintaining our humanity and connection to others? Machiavelli would argue that it comes down to a combination of self-knowledge, strategic thinking, and adaptability. He writes, "The one who adapts his policy to the times prospers, and likewise that the one whose policy clashes with the demands of the times does not." This adaptability, this ability to read the times and adjust our approach accordingly, is a key component of virtue. It's about being flexible in our methods while remaining steadfast in our goals and values. I challenge you to reflect on your own life. Where have you been rigid when flexibility was called for? Where have you clung to outdated assumptions about your own capabilities, refusing to adapt to new circumstances and opportunities? Remember, Machiavelli's philosophy is not about manipulating others or sacrificing our ethics for personal gain. It's about seeing the world clearly, understanding human nature, including our own, and taking decisive action to shape our circumstances rather than being shaped by them. As we continue to explore Machiavelli's ideas, let us hold on to this central truth: assuming your inferiority is not humility, it's a form of self-sabotage. True virtue lies in recognizing your own potential, cultivating your strengths, and having the courage to act in accordance with your highest aspirations. In the words of Machiavelli himself, "Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great." As we move forward, let us cultivate that willingness, the willingness to see ourselves clearly, to challenge our assumptions of inferiority, and to step boldly into our own power. For in doing so, we not only transform our own lives, but contribute to the betterment of the world around us. The Alchemy of Ambition: Transmuting Self-Doubt into Machiavellian Mastery. In our journey through Machiavelli's philosophy, we've explored the concept of virtue and the dangers of assumed inferiority. Now, let us delve into the practical application of these ideas, the alchemy of transforming self-doubt into personal power and societal impact. Machiavelli understood that true power comes not from title or position, but from the ability to understand and influence the world around us. He wrote, The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. This insight extends far beyond politics. It speaks to the fundamental importance of surrounding ourselves with those who challenge and inspire us. Consider your own circle of influence. Are you surrounded by those who reinforce your assumed inferiority, or by those who push you to grow and excel? Machiavelli would argue that the company we keep is not just a reflection of who we are, but a powerful force in shaping who we become. But this is not merely about networking or social climbing. It's about cultivating an environment that nurtures our virtue and challenges our self-imposed limitations. It's about seeking out those who see our potential even when we cannot, and who inspire us to reach beyond our comfort zones. Machiavelli also emphasizes the importance of understanding the times in which we live. He states, "Whoever wishes to foresee the future must consult the past." This is not just a call to study history, but an invitation to develop a deep understanding of the patterns and forces that shape our world. I challenge you to consider, how well do you understand the times in which you live? Are you aware of the trends, the power dynamics, the opportunities and threats that define your environment? Or have you allowed assumptions of inferiority to keep you ignorant and reactive, rather than informed and proactive? Machiavelli's philosophy demands that we become students of our world, not passive observers, but active participants in shaping our reality. It requires us to look beyond our immediate circumstances and understand the broader context in which we operate. This understanding, coupled with the cultivation of virtue, allows us to move from a place of assumed inferiority to one of strategic action. Machiavelli writes, "Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others." While this may sound aggressive, it speaks to a fundamental truth that growth and impact require us to move beyond mere self-preservation to active engagement with the world. So I ask you, where in your life have you been merely seeking to secure yourself against attack? Where have you allowed fear and assumed inferiority to keep you in a defensive posture, rather than stepping forward to create the change you wish to see? Machiavelli's wisdom challenges us to recognize that true security comes not from hiding or shrinking, but from developing our strengths and engaging boldly with the world. It invites us to see that our assumed inferiority is often the greatest threat we face, far more dangerous than any external challenge. As we continue to explore and apply Machiavelli's philosophy, let us remember that the goal is not domination or manipulation, but rather the full expression of our human potential. It's about recognizing that when we step into our power, when we refuse to assume our inferiority, we create ripples that extend far beyond our individual lives. For in the end, Machiavelli's greatest lesson may be this: that our individual growth and empowerment is inextricably linked to the betterment of society as a whole. That as we cultivate our virtue and challenge our assumed limitations, we create new possibilities, not just for ourselves, but for all those whose lives we touch. The renaissance of self-forging a Machiavellian legacy in an uncertain world. As we draw our exploration of Machiavelli's philosophy to a close, we find ourselves not at an endpoint, but at the threshold of a new beginning. For the wisdom we've uncovered is not meant to be passively contemplated, but actively lived, a call to action that resonates across the centuries. Machiavelli's final lesson to us is perhaps his most profound, that in an uncertain world, the only true security lies in our ability to adapt, to grow, and to shape our own destiny. He writes, I believe that it is possible for one never to be unfortunate if one has that versatility of nature which enables him to adapt himself to the diverse circumstances in which he may be placed. This versatility, this refusal to be defined or limited by circumstances, is the ultimate antidote to assumed inferiority. It's a recognition that our worth is not determined by external factors, but by our capacity to learn, to change, and to impact the world around us.so. I challenge you, dear listener, how will you cultivate this versatility in your own life? How will you break free from the chains of assumed inferiority and step into the fullness of your potential? Remember, Machiavelli's philosophy is not about achieving a fixed state of perfection, but about embracing a process of continuous growth and adaptation. It's about recognizing that every challenge is an opportunity, every setback a chance to refine our strategies and strengthen our resolve. As we move forward, let us carry with us the core tenets of Machiavelli's wisdom, the power of virtue, that combination of courage, foresight, and decisive action that allows us to shape our circumstances rather than be shaped by them. The importance of clear-sighted realism, seeing the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, while never losing sight of our power to change it. The necessity of adaptability, recognizing that in a changing world, rigid thinking and assumed limitations are far more dangerous than any external threat. The responsibility of impact, understanding that as we grow and overcome our assumed inferiority, we create new possibilities not just for ourselves but for our communities and society as a whole. Machiavelli's legacy invites us to see ourselves not as passive recipients of fate, but as active creators of our own reality. It challenges us to recognize that every time we assume our inferiority, we not only diminish ourselves, but we deprive the world of the unique contributions only we can make. So, as we conclude, I leave you with this final thought from Machiavelli. The wise man does at once what the fool does. Finally, let this be our call to action, to move beyond assumed inferiority, to embrace our virtue, and to engage boldly with the world around us. For in doing so, we do more than improve our own lives. We contribute to the renaissance of our communities, our societies, and perhaps even our world. We become not just students of Machiavelli's philosophy, but living embodiments of its highest ideals. As you step back into your life, carry with you this profound truth: you are not inferior. You are a being of immense potential, capable of adapting to any circumstance, ready to shape your world rather than be shaped by it. Embrace this truth, live it fully, and watch as the assumed limitations of yesterday give way to the boundless possibilities of tomorrow. In the end, this is Machiavelli's greatest gift to us, not a manual for manipulation, but an invitation to fully realize our human potential. May we honor this legacy not just in our thoughts, but in our actions as we forge ahead into the uncertain but infinitely promising future that awaits us all.